Hello, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Joe Riedel with Straub Construction, and I serve as chair of the Shawnee Chamber's Government Affairs Committee. It is my honor to be your moderator for today's forum. We appreciate everybody taking part in this virtual forum, as we all know too well now that this is the new norm. However, having hosted a few of these now between the House 18th District Republican primary and the Democratic primary for the House 39th District, we can say those turned out very well, and we're all excited to hear from the candidates participating today. On behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council, a collaboration of all 10 area chambers of commerce, and particularly on behalf of Overland Park, Northeast, and Shawnee chambers, thank you for attending our forum featuring candidates in the Republican primary for Kansas Senate District 10. I would also like to thank the sponsor of our government affairs program here in Shawnee throughout the year, Evergy. Thank you, Evergy. On to the format. The format will be the same as all the forums hosted by the Johnson County Public Policy Council and be as follows. First, each candidate will be given a 3-minute opening statement for just an open-ended opening. Then we will go into a question and answer period, which each candidate then will have 1.5 minutes to respond. And we will finish with a 2-minute closing statement by each candidate. The format, questions, and time limits will be the same for each candidate. And due to time constraints, there will be no follow-up questions or formal rebuttal time. Candidate speaking order has been randomly determined with the candidates, and we will rotate throughout the program. Questions have been prepared in advance by the chamber staff based on member input and have not been shared with candidates. If we have time, we will attempt to answer any questions that might be submitted via the chat function in Zoom. On to the introduction. Let me now introduce the candidates in alphabetical order for the Republican primary for Senate District 10. This district is all of Shawnee and southern parts of Marion and northern Overland Park. First, again in alphabetical order, is Representative Tom Cox. Tom Cox is a 5th-generation Kansas small business owner who was born and raised in Shawnee. He is currently serving in his 2nd term in the Kansas House and also owns his own small business consulting firm where he helps small and local businesses find efficiencies in their operations and cost savings. Now, Senator Mike Thompson. Mike Thompson spent nearly 40 years in broadcasting, much of it on 2 Kansas City television stations. Beyond his work on television, he is heavily involved in the Kansas City community and is currently serving the remainder of former District 10 Senator Mary Pilcher Cook's term. So with that, with the coin toss, Senator Thompson won the coin toss. So we will start with you, Senator Thompson. You have 3 minutes to give us an opening.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that very much and appreciate everybody joining the webinar today. First of all, a little background about me. I'm a native Kansan. I was born in Wichita. I grew up in a small town in Burlington, Kansas. This is about 100 miles southwest of here. My mom still lives down there along with one of my daughters. I've got 2 daughters and 1 son. All grew up here in the Shawnee area. About the only time I haven't lived in Kansas is when I went into the Navy, and I went through their meteorology program, served aboard an aircraft carrier as a weather observer and forecaster. Got into television, as you mentioned, turned into about a 40-year career, during which I also wrote and produced School Day of the K for the Kansas City Royals. That was my idea. So I educated over 250,000 students on that particular program over the course of 20 years. So I know what it is to do a lot of work there. I've been on the radio many times. In fact, I worked for 20 years on television radio at the same time. But throughout my broadcasting career, I also paid attention to politics. I've been interested in economics. It's always been kind of one of those subjects I followed for many, many years. I took economics in college. So I really think that the television training and all that I've been doing over the course of my life has prepared me for this job as senator. You do need a lot of life experience, I think. I've actually, since I got off of television, I've started 3 different businesses. One's a nonprofit, 2 other businesses. One is a consulting business, the other we're actually building right now. So I've been very, very busy. I know what it takes to raise a family, to put food on the table, put a roof over their heads. And I understand the challenges that we have in this district because I've lived here in Shawnee for almost 38 years. And I love this place. It's our home. It's where I raised the kids. And I really want to continue to represent all of you in the Senate.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator.
All right.
On to Representative Cox. Take it away. Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Thanks to all the chambers participating and everyone else joining this forum. It's been my honor to serve our community for the last 4 years in the Kansas House of Representatives. I am born and raised not only just here in Shawnee, but in the House district I represent and in the Senate district. So it's an incredible opportunity to serve and a really exciting possibility to get to serve the entire community as its state senator. Like you mentioned, Joe, I own my own small business consulting firm. On top of that, I have 2 other businesses. One a little bit older. I founded a small specialty call center here in Johnson County that employs more than 30 people in Johnson County back in 2014. It continues to go well. We were very happy that we were able to survive the shutdown and the pandemic. So I know firsthand how these kind of issues with government affect and impact businesses directly. In fact, the all of us owners agreed that we would take no salary for the remainder of the year to avoid any layoffs and to ensure that the business not only could keep going forward, but we could keep our talented staff on board, not risk losing them or putting them on unemployment. Additionally, I'm actually opening up an axe throwing bar in Topeka right now with a couple of investors. And so as Senator Thompson probably is feeling right now too, there's no time like the middle of a campaign to start a new business, but when opportunities present themselves. And so that's been one of my enjoyments in serving, is understanding not just this community, but when we're passing laws, when we're talking about regulations, knowing firsthand how it's impacting and affecting us directly, and other small business owners, which make up the largest amount of employers in the state of Kansas. So I've really enjoyed my time working for the people of this community. I hope to have the opportunity to continue to serve it more. Like Senator Thompson said, again, there's a lot of things we agree on in these open statements. That Shawnee is a great community to raise a family. That's why I moved back here. It's because I thought, though I don't have a family yet, it's where I want to raise mine. It's why my brother and his family, my younger brother, why we all moved back to the Shawnee area, because this is home. It always will be. And with that, I'd love to get to answer any additional questions you guys have. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, perfect, Representative Cox. And along those lines, you're actually up first, switching order here. So question number 1, what do you see as the top 3 business policy issues facing the state of Kansas in the coming year?
So trying to think directly about what ones. Obviously, COVID is going to be the largest issue impacting the state, what the revenue forecasts are going to do, what unemployment's looking like, just across the board, how it's impacting and changing businesses, some for good, some in bad. You have more businesses that are finding that they can actually move more online and reduce office space potentially, but then we're finding a lot of hard realities and people losing their jobs. And so I think that is going to be the biggest issue. And it's not just one, it's addressing all of the fallout from that, from the budget to how it's impacted companies in Kansas. I still say one of the largest issues facing Kansas is after 2017, when the Trump tax cuts were passed, we have not decoupled from the federal government. And so we are one of the very few states that continues to tax foreign earned income on businesses operating in the state of Kansas, which is only putting us at a competitive disadvantage to other states, specifically Missouri, that does not tax that. That's something we have to decouple from. We tried to pass it in 2018 and 2019, but sadly we're not able to get the votes to move it forward. But that's, I think, going to be a major issue going forward, because that deals with a lot of our major employers, and they're not going to keep adding jobs here. Additionally, that's going to be support of the business community from a regulatory standpoint, but also, people like public-private partnerships. They want to see government being able to work with businesses to create a welcoming environment for them to know that if they're coming in there, they're going to have a relationship with government at all different levels. As I know the cities and the local chambers know very well, if the city council is not willing to work with their businesses, the chamber has a very hard time getting businesses to come to that city. So I think it's building those relationships.
Okay, thank you. And just a quick reminder, Senator Thompson, I'll repeat the question for you if it helps you.
Okay.
But just in this section, we have a minute and a half to answer, and Representative Cox, you did well there. But just a reminder. So to repeat the question again, Senator Thompson, what do you see as the top 3 business policy issues facing the state of Kansas in the coming year?
Well, I think first and foremost, as Representative Cox mentioned, the fallout from COVID is going to be number one. How do we deal with the budget shortfall that we're presented with? And we're going to have to look very, very carefully at every item in the budget, because at this point we can't be raising taxes on businesses that are trying to get back on their feet, people who have lost their jobs. So if Kansans are having to tighten their belts, then the state should have to tighten its belts as well. We want to be very tax friendly. We've got issues with property taxes that are a problem for people. We've got sales taxes. In parts of Shawnee, we're approaching well over 10% on sales taxes. That's a big problem. And then, of course, the regulatory issues as well. We've got to be competitive with the surrounding states. So those are 3 big issues, I think. And really, bottom line is we've got to make this a welcoming state, not only for our current businesses, but also to attract businesses. And one way you've got to look at our tax rates. We are the 5th highest taxed state behind New York, Illinois, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. That doesn't bode well for us. So we've got to look at how we can change that tax structure and to be more favorable for everybody here in the state of Kansas. And for the incentives for businesses, they should not be pick and choose or cherry pick. Okay, got out of time. So in other words, we need to be very cautious about how we apply those incentives and make it so that everybody can take advantage of it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And actually, as we're going through, I'll try to give you I've got my phone here now with the stopwatch. So I'll try to give you like a thumbs up or something to give you kind of about a 15-second heads up, okay?
All right.
And so like we just did here, we're kind of going back and forth. Senator Thompson, this next question is going to start with you.
Okay.
And, as a reminder, these questions were written ahead of time and are open-ended. You briefly touched on the budget, but there's another opportunity to get a little bit more detailed maybe. So how would you propose to balance the state budget? What specific budget cuts would you support, and what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
Well, in terms of cutting the budget, I think really what we've got to do is go line by line. Take a look at where there might be wasteful spending, and if you can't look through a government budget and find wasteful spending, you're not looking that hard. So rather than dive into specifics at this point, I think I'd rather just leave it at that. That we have to review everything going into this. At the end of this session, we had a budget that was going to be $50 million higher than the previous budget, and we knew the state was going to be shut down. It didn't make sense to me at that point. So we've got to look at things that we can defer, projects that can be put off until later. We've got to look at where there are areas that we can, I know of some specific areas where there's some money sitting there that we are not using. And so we've got to go through that and see where we can cut the budget because we're going to be $1.5 billion behind as we go into fiscal year 2021. And so it's going to be a big problem there. So at this point, other than just saying that we need to look at it very carefully and see what we can do, I hate to say we're going to cut this program or that program because I want to be able to look at the whole thing.
Okay, perfect. So Representative Cox, if you'd like, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the question. How would you propose to balance the state budget? What specific budget cuts would you support, and what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
I'll start with revenue enhancements. There really aren't any taxes that you could raise, and I would oppose doing that. I think we are maxed out. In fact, we need to be continuing to reevaluate how we can keep property taxes down. We need to be lowering our sales tax. If not on everything, absolutely on food, as we're the 2nd highest food sales tax state in the nation. So I don't think there's opportunities in that realm. There are other ones, sports gambling, for example. You could look at medicinal marijuana that has broad support and classifying it not as a pharmaceutical, so you still tax it in that sense. not recreational, but just from the pharmaceutical medical perspective. So there are different areas we can look in there. And then we have to look at what kind of incentive programs bring businesses here that help enhance. I love business incentive programs. Sometimes you have to make sure they're well regulated so you don't give away the farm on accident and cost the state or the local government more than what the net benefit is. As far as balancing the budget, I think we are still right now on a path where it will balance going forward. I think the hardest thing about budget cuts is people say we need to cut them, but no one ever has a suggestion of where. Every single year, my 4 years of serving, we've had people say we need to cut the budget, and then we get an open budget debate and they propose zero budget cuts. And so if we are looking at budget cuts, we probably have to do an even percentage across the board to a lot of departments and agencies while trying to protect areas like education, foster care, where we have the most vulnerable children in place.
Okay, thank you, Representative Cox. And sticking with you here, question number 3, what would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
That is a great question because we talk constantly about workforce development being one of the major issues here in Kansas. I was very active on working on trying to get the new airport built out because the number one reason a lot of businesses said they weren't coming to the Kansas City area was we don't have an airport that can support our business needs. But the second thing they talk about is immediately workforce development. And we actually have the ability, this corridor right here between Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, where we're that center metro that you could bring a lot of these businesses. We've got to get in there in the education system and start making sure we're teaching K through 12 to say there's not one path. College does not mean success. Success means finding the right path for you, whether it's armed service, whether it's going to a 4-year university, whether it's going to a technical or trade program or an apprenticeship program, all these different, maybe it's going immediately into the workforce. There's all these different paths. We need to continue to not only support and educate people that all of these paths mean success, so long as you're passionate about what you're doing. But then we need to support those projects. We need to bring back skilled labor as part of the education curriculum to get people involved in there and develop that area. We need to fully support our higher ed institutions to make sure they're producing top quality candidates for these jobs. Because we know, there's, Amazon wouldn't even look at Kansas probably for a lot of reasons, just from size. But one of the reasons was, their fear that we can't produce enough employees that they would need to hire right out the gate from our universities.
Perfect timing. Senator Thompson, back to you here, and you may not need it, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat the question for you. I don't remember exactly how. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Well, we've got a problem with the state's workforce in that we had a number of jobs that went unfilled. Prior to this COVID-19, we had 56,000 jobs. And not enough people who qualified to fill those slots because of a number of different reasons. A lot of that was from training. They were unable to do that. So I think we really have to look at the education and making sure that our high school students can come out and have the skills to be able to take those jobs. And obviously have the incentive to stay within the state. We tried to pass the Kansas Promise Act, which would also help to develop some of the industrial arts education for people who not only are coming up and for those who it doesn't fit for college, but also for those who have lost their jobs and need to retrain. So that's one big area that we need to look at. But we've got to improve the education here at the K through 12 level in Kansas. We're failing our students right now. We're putting $4.8 billion into K through 12 education, and we're getting about a 35% success rate of students being able to perform at grade level. So that's a failing grade. So we've got to look at how we can improve those scores. We've got to improve the transparency and the accountability at the schools so that we can produce those folks that can come out and those kids that can come out and get into the workforce. Okay.
Another perfect timing.
So,
and we're staying with you here, Senator Thompson. Okay. And you just touched on this, but the next question is along the lines of K-12 funding, and you already touched on it. But can you share with us your views on K-12 funding?
Well, we know right now because of the Gannon decision that they are fully funded as approved by the Kansas Supreme Court. That's an open-ended case right now. It's not been settled. Personally, I don't think that the Supreme Court should have jurisdiction over that. It's the legislature's job to determine what K through 12 funding should be. That being said, like I just mentioned, we're spending an awful lot of money on this. And I'm getting a lot of folks out there in the community that are very concerned for a number of different reasons, not only the fact that our schools were shut down in the fourth quarter and nothing really happened there. So we need to look at K-12 funding very, very carefully, but really the accountability is going to be the big deal. What we need to do, there are 7 school districts out in Western Kansas that have less than 100 students. We should be considering, consolidating some of those districts. I know a lot of those folks don't want to do that, but that's one way that we could cut down on it. They're also sitting on reserve cash of $962 million. What are these schools doing with that money? Why is that? We're spending $15,000 on average per student in the state of Kansas. And like I said, we're not getting the results that we want. So we need to look at what we can do, both from a transparency issue, because a lot of these school boards don't want accountability. We got to see what they're doing and making sure that the money is getting to the classroom. We know that less than half of the money that we're spending on K through 12 is getting to the classroom, not to the kids, but a lot of it's going to administration. So we've got to look at that very carefully. It's a big problem for the state. Funding, you can't continually throw money at a problem and continue to do the same thing and not get the results you expect. So that is a big problem for the state.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. And back to you, Representative Cox. Just to repeat the question, can you share with us your views on K-12 funding?
Yes, I think education is the major reason Johnson County developed the way it did. I know my parents were living in Topeka at the time, even my dad's a native Johnson Countyan, and they moved here when I was born as their second kid because they wanted to put us somewhere where we had a strong public school system. And that is why predominantly people choose to live here. Strong schools, strong community, good parks, safe community. And so I think we had chronically underfunded it for years. Our funding levels were lower in 2016 when you had CPI adjustment than they were in 2008. And that was a major issue. And we were seeing the effects of it in classrooms. As a graduate of Shawnee Mission Northwest that I represent that area today, I could see directly the drop off in quality that had happened in between there. Still a great school, but I could see how hard budget effects have hit them. So we did increase it. We did meet the court standard. And I think we need to continue down that plan. It is the right level, but we did input a lot of accountability measures that were unprecedented in the state. And that's what a lot of people forget is we said, you have to show us exactly how you're spending the new money since you said you needed it. Every year we get a report on that. And then we said, you have to show us the metrics. You're saying, here are our problems. We need money to fix it. Every year we benchmark that to show we can say we've increased the investment and that they have to show us that the metrics are improving. And if they can't show us that over the next few years, then that's when we have to come back in and evaluate policy and look at the other pieces instead of them saying, well, we need more money. No, at that point we've produced the money and now we need to look at policy for it. So I think it's a combination.
Okay, thank you. And again, Representative Cox, you'll be taking the 5th question here. What type of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
So I think that a really good program that we have is the Star Bonds program to bring in large scale development. I think one of the problems we've had is for a few years, I think it was used a little too liberally and it really tarnished its name instead of people really focusing on the amazing things it did for Wyandotte County with the Speedway and the Legends. So I like to see programs like that. I'd like to see our local communities engaged, and I believe in local control of allowing cities to try to provide incentive programs for the development. Additionally, at the state level, we have some of the best angel investing tax credit programs in the nation. I think we should be looking at how do we expand those programs, because I've talked to many investors that have come in and said, this is something that drew me to this community. You guys should be the model of how people are doing this. We also should be looking at and researching what other states are doing outside that to see what we can continue to do. One of the hardest things that happened under Governor Brownback was the decimation of the Department of Commerce. And I've appreciated that it's being rebuilt, and Governor Collier had started that rebuilding process entirely, but they're the salespeople of our state. They're the ones going out there, bringing the businesses and developing, finding what the right solutions are and coming back to us and saying, this makes sense, this doesn't. So I think that we need to continue to build up commerce and make some investments over there that will, I think, pay 10, 100 times the investment that we would be making over there in long-term economic development and job growth.
Okay, Senator Thompson, back to you. What type of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Well, first of all, I think I don't like the STAR bonds because the taxpayers end up holding the bag. It's been successful in a couple of places, but look at Prairie Fire; they still owe $65 million on that. So what we're doing is picking and choosing winners, and that's not the government's job. What we should do is, if we're going to have incentives, do so that it's equally applied to anybody who has a good idea and can innovate across the state. So I don't like those types of programs. I would rather see situations where we, again, open it up to anybody who has a good idea and innovate, and they can present it to us and show us where the state public-private partnerships make sense. So that's a big deal. The utility rates in Kansas are also big. We've got to get those utility rates down. Otherwise, we're going to continue to bleed businesses from the state. I know one gentleman who owns a business here in Shawnee and also some manufacturing farther south, and he pays about $5 million more per year in electrical costs than if he'd moved across the state line to Missouri. So we've got to be able to hold utility prices down as well. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to attract our manufacturing base and some of the bigger companies, because that's a big, big deal. The other concern I have is that with the COVID-19, we're shifting more of these businesses to home base. What's going to happen to all of these, buildings that we've got, office buildings sitting empty now, if we go that direction? So we've got to address that problem. There are multiple problems that we have to address. Regulation, of course, is one. The tax issue is one. We've got to make it very appealing for all these businesses so we can grow the business community here in the state of Kansas.
Okay. And sticking with you, Senator Thompson, what are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion in Kansas?
Medicaid expansion, I would absolutely oppose. It will bust the state budget for a number of different reasons. First of all, you have to understand what Medicaid expansion does. Medicaid itself covers the indigent elderly, the poor, mothers who are on welfare and can't afford, who are pregnant, the physically disabled and the intellectually and developmentally disabled. So these are people we can't already pay for. In fact, the IDD community has over 4,000 that are not fully funded. And to expand Medicaid, we're going to jump right over them and fund the next group of people up, which are above the poverty line, up to 138% of poverty. But more importantly, they are able-bodied folks between 18 and 64, and they're going to be able to, fend for themselves. So otherwise, in other words, we're picking those people over those who are most needy in the state of Kansas. Medicaid expansion, we know, would cost us at least, it kind of look at it this way: we've got already 430,000 Kansans on Medicaid and some of the various other programs, CHIP, for example. If we expanded Medicaid, we're going to increase that population to 562, almost 563,000 Kansans. That's 20% of Kansans. So that's reducing the number of people who can pay into the program to help to support it in the first place. The costs are going to go through the roof, and it just doesn't make sense for a number of different reasons. Plus, at what point do you stop?
Senator Thompson, we're over our time there. I'm trying, I don't know if you can see, I'm trying to give a 15-second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the camera, I can't see you.
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe I need to give a 30-second. So
it's a long answer, but
yeah,
bottom line is a big problem.
So back to you, Representative Cox. What are your views on the healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion in Kansas?
Republicans this last year put together a Republican plan that wasn't so dissimilar than what Vice President Mike Pence put together in Indiana when he was governor of a Republican state. It would actually eliminate the fear of the over expenditure because it had pay-fors. Hospitals were willing to put in, it had a co-pay for people that became on expansion, on Medicaid under expansion, but it would be net revenue neutral to the budget. And that's before you factor in bringing $500 to $900 million of federal funding directly into the state, the net positive that would have. Additionally, people say, well, what if we drop below the 10% reimbursement? That's when the state budget could blow up. I agree, which is why I will only support a version of Medicaid expansion that has a poison pill that says if the federal government changes their reimbursement rate lower than 90%, it shuts the program down automatically. End of the year, it is done. And you'd have to start from scratch and rebuild the whole thing. I hear the argument talking about the IDD, intellectually and developmentally disabled population, but they across the board support Medicaid expansion because every state that expanded, these are two different pots. They've seen that it did not impact IDD populations or make it more difficult for them to receive services. And if we are worried about them receiving services because there's a long wait list, then we need to make sure to elect people who will vote for the budget that increases the amount of funding to going to that wait list and getting more IDD people onto the system to get the care that they need.
Okay. Next question to you, Representative Cox. What do you, well, kind of winding, or no, I'm sorry. What are your views on state tax policy? Almost missed one there. You guys have both hinted at it already, but another opportunity to discuss it more.
Absolutely. Well, I think that we need to work on lowering our sales tax, starting on food, but would like to see us eliminate the 1.5% overall increase that was made in, I believe it was 2013 or 2014. And so I think that needs to, so 2014, I think that needs to be a priority for us. We need to cap the rising increases in property tax. And the issue is not property tax rates are increasing, it's valuations that we need to find a balance, because in my district, I'm talking to retirees that are getting priced out of their home. And that's why I worked on legislation to help freeze property taxes on those retirees. We need to look at what, back to decoupling from the federal after the 2017 Trump tax cuts to make sure we're not penalizing companies for operating in Kansas. We just felt a few votes shy of overriding the governor's veto, and we need to continue to push that forward. I think there's probably some tweaks that can be made, but people didn't really seem interested in compromising on that, which is why I think it inevitably failed. But we absolutely, without question, need to prioritize allowing individuals in the state of Kansas to itemize again by decoupling, saying you can itemize if you qualify in the state, even if you don't qualify at the federal government. Or we should also additionally talk about upping I forgot the term for it, but what you'd do for itemization, the natural write-off. We also need to look at how we're taxing retirees as well, and make sure we're not being a punitive state and encouraging our retirees to bounce out of state because of our bad tax policy.
Okay. Question goes back to you, Senator Thompson. What are your views on state tax policy?
Obviously, taxes are too high. I co-sponsored 2 property tax bills this year, and they were vetoed by the governor. Those both would have held the property taxes in check. I also introduced a bill that would had exempted food taxes, or in the sales tax, in other words, in CID districts, so that anybody who was buying food would not be able to, or would not have to pay that extra tax for their food in those particular districts where we give incentives to some of the developers. So obviously we've got to do whatever we can to reduce the taxes in the state of Kansas, and I think that starts with cutting spending. You can't reduce taxes unless you cut spending, and so we've got to, again, it goes back to the budget. We've got to look at everything line by line so we can actually reduce those taxes and keep a balanced budget. That's the smartest thing to do.
Okay. On to the last question for the Q&A period, which is, what do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race? And sticking with you, Senator Thompson.
Okay. Well, I think fiscal accountability. It's having the courage to vote against some things that look good on the surface, but actually would have hurt the state budget. The budget plan was the beginning. You look at the Senate Bill 66. I've been criticized on that for voting against the budget, But on the day we were voting for it, we knew the economy of the state was going to be shut down. There was unspecified spending in there for COVID-19. We don't even know where that money is being spent. It just didn't make sense. So you've got to look at everything and have the courage to stand up and say, no, this is not the right thing to do. I don't forget whose money it is we're spending. And so each bill has to be evaluated on its merits, and I think that's a very, very big thing going forward. So it's not that I'm against doing the right thing, but I'm against spending money that's wasteful. I'm against making decisions that will hurt Kansans. We need to look at everything. There's some big problems coming down the pike in our budget, and you've got to have some people who are willing to say no. And voting no is not always the wrong thing to do. You just have to have some plans to do whatever you can to defer funding and defer projects and do what you can to hold the line on the budget.
All right, thanks, Senator. And that question back to you, Representative Cox. What do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
I think Senator Thompson definitely hit on a major one. People constantly say you need to cut the budget, you need to cut wasteful spending, but they can't produce any answers on what needs to be cut. They say we need to evaluate it. I've spent 4 years up here and I've heard that every single year, and then no one proposes budget cuts. Senator Thompson didn't provide any budget cuts this year when they had an open debate on the budget, I believe twice, nor did any of his colleagues have significant budget cuts. So we talk about rhetoric. You know, I'm not going to come and tell you what sounds popular at the door. I'm going to tell you what I actually think. Do I love every part of the budget? No. But that budget also included things for funding for increase to foster care to get kids to not have to sleep in offices anymore. It included increases for the IDD population, included funding for our schools. There's critical needs services in there. And at the end of the day, if you are not willing to sit down and be someone who is willing to have a seat at the table and say, I'm willing to support this budget, but let's talk about it, then you don't have a seat at the table and the budget just keeps going up. So I would actually say that voting no isn't always the wrong thing, but it's the easy thing. Instead, if you don't have a proposal counter to it, you can't just say, well, I voted no. You have to actually present a proposal of what you would do differently. And I think that's one of the things that distinguish us. If I'm voting no, I'm putting a counter proposal of what I would support out there. I'm not just saying, you know, something generic that doesn't really provide an alternative solution. I'm willing to make the hard decisions and take the hard votes.
Okay, thank you very much. And that actually concludes the question and answer period. So sticking with you, Representative Cox, you each now will have 2 minutes to just present closing statements. So with that said, go ahead, Representative Cox.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone again. And thank you for Senator Thompson for being here as well. We are in a very heated campaign, but I just want to extend my appreciation for him for being a part of the democratic process. I know as this is my third one, this is not an easy process. It is a huge sacrifice personally, for your family, for as both of us as business owners, for our businesses, I'm sure. So I do appreciate that, and that we're having a debate out there based on, you know, the differences in our views. But then we're happy to have no doubt come together and talk about the views we share, which, you know, are pro-life views and wanting to defend Second Amendment rights in the state as well. It's been my greatest honor to serve this community as a state representative for the last 4 years. I would love the opportunity to get to serve as a state senator. It is something that it's hard to ever put into words, the service you get to do to your state in this job. But there's nothing I would rather be doing right now. I love knocking doors and having conversations with people. I love going to the schools and getting to talk to students about, you know, what we do at the state and what our role is. I love getting to work with families and advocacy groups on pushing their issues forward, like the dyslexia legislation I helped pass in 2018, or the association health plan bill that helped reduce healthcare costs in the state that I got to work on in 2019. It's an incredible honor to get to represent the community that I know and love. And I would love to have that opportunity again. And I just want to again thank the Chamber for always being involved. Thank you, Joe, for taking the time out of your day for putting this on. And thank you to Senator Thompson for being a part of this process. I think that's just something we probably don't say to each other enough. Anyone in politics is, you're heated debate, you both want to win, but at the same time, we need that appreciation that both people are making sacrifices to put themselves forward into these debates, taking the heat, taking the hits, And I have no doubt that even if we disagree on policy, both of us are just trying to better our community.
All right. Thank you, Representative Cox. Close us out, Senator Thompson. You have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. And again, thank you to Representative Cox for the same, for his sacrifice and his service, and for all of you and everybody watching today. From my standpoint, obviously, as a new senator, there's a learning curve, no doubt about that. But I got up to speed very, very quickly this year, and I do want to continue to contribute to the state. This is a state I love. It's where I grew up. This is a community I love, and where I've raised my kids. And I do enjoy talking to everybody out on the campaign trail. This is no doubt a sacrifice for everybody involved. You get out here and you are trying to serve the community to the best of your ability. And I feel like I have the qualities and life skills to be able to continue to do that. I look at things through the prism of your benefit financially, economically, and morally. And I want to be able to go home at night after making a decision up at the State House, lay my head on the pillow and know I made the right decision. There's a lot of studying involved. You have to look into every aspect of every issue. I'm willing to do the hard work. I've done it for many years in various capacities, and I put my whole heart into this and a lot of time, as anybody who knows who has served in the past. This is not an easy job. It is a big sacrifice, but it's one I want to continue to serve, and make this state a better place for everybody, economically, financially, and for everybody's family as well. Sorry about that. Google Voice.
Not your time.
Yeah. And so I would appreciate everyone's consideration on August 4th, and extend my best wishes to Representative Cox as well for all his hard work.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Thompson. And with that, we conclude today's forum for the Republican primary for Senate District 10. And thank you, Tom and Mike, for taking the time to be with us and share your thoughts. And again, very big thank you to Evergy. Thank you for all you do. Today's forum will be available to view along with the other primary races in Johnson County on the JC PPC website at votejoco.com. And many of the candidates have completed candidate questionnaires that can be found there as well. Let me close by reminding viewers of a few key dates. Advanced voting by mail began last week on July 15th. Advanced voting in person began this past Monday, July 20th. Primary election day is Tuesday, August 4th, with the polls open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So please get out there and vote. And once again, thank you to both of our candidates for showing up today, and thank you for the chambers for hosting this event. Thank you very much. Have a great day.